Hello, this is David Pietrusza, author of 1932, The Rise of Hitler and FDR, two tales of politics, betrayal, and unlikely destiny. And what we're going to be doing here right now is talking about the background of the book and some random thoughts, which really aren't that random. They're pretty central to how the book came about. It started, well, people ask me, how does it start? Why did you do this book? Well, we've done 1920, 1948, 1960. We've done a trilogy previously about presidential elections. So we continue on that path, but we do it with a big twist. We do it where we take a look at 1932, where these two titanic figures of 20th century history, Hitler and FDR, rise to power. They have their elections for president in 1932. They take power in 1933. So it's an obvious idea. But yet, it had never been done. Once upon a time, I went to my mentor in publishing, a fellow named John Thorne, who's now the official historian of Major League Baseball. And I said, John, I have an idea, but I'd like to apologize for it because it's so obvious. And he said, never apologize to me for coming with an idea that is so obvious, because the obvious ideas are the best ones. And I think that was the case here. Surprises in doing the book? Well, the fact that this was probably in the English language, no, not probably, in the English language, definitely, this was the most comprehensive look at Hitler's electoral rise to power and his actual politicking as we sort of know it, as opposed to just sort of beating people up or giving speeches in beer halls. Another surprise, 4 of these books, 20, 48, 60, 32, and who shows up in all of them? Eleanor Roosevelt as a major player. And the look at her is somewhat surprising in this book. There are a lot of twists and turns which I had not expected in doing it, and I think the readers are going to be surprised by. Also, looking on the other side of the Atlantic, Joseph Goebbels, not only evil, but thoroughly dislikable. Not a nice guy on any level. One of the pleasures I get in doing these books is discovering lost writers in 1920. I had a lot of enjoyment from looking at Haywood Broun. I don't think that columnist, that member of the Algonquin Round Table, ever wrote a bad sentence in his life. And he's here back in 1932. You also see a writer on the German side named Daniel Guerin, who has a great turn of phrase about Hermann Goering, describes him as half clown, half executioner. So true, so true. And you also find out, or I found out, that Hitler's early biographers, Conrad Hayden and a guy named Rudolf Olden, hold up surprisingly well. They got it right early. The book, in writing it, or rather in researching it, was doing 2 books at once, and I don't recommend this trick. Don't do this at home, kids. And then once the researching was done, not that it's ever really done, I wrote the American part first, then the German part, then folded the 2 chapters together into one book. Am I comparing Hitler and FDR here? Yes and no. I mean, the 2 tales, politics, betrayal, unlikely destiny. But don't look for too much in this, because people ask me, what's the thesis of your book? What's the thesis of any book that you're doing? And I really don't want to do theses, because when you do that, you're going to try and fit all the facts you discover or look for new facts to prove that thesis. I'd rather not do that. I'd rather have the theory tell it, or the facts tell themselves. What are you working on? People ask me that all the time. Authors get asked that. They're not saying, they don't ask a plumber or a doctor what they're working on or what the next project is going to be. And people would ask me what your next project is. What are you working on? And I'd say 1932, that election, and I wouldn't get much of a response. And then I'd say 1932, U.S., Germany, and their eyebrows would arch and their eyes would get big, and there would be a tremendous amount of interest in that. So I think we've got a winner here. I've always loved history from being from a small child, and I like to write popular history rather than doing unpopular history. I think there's enough unpopular history out there. I'm always stunned at how people do not like history. It's a story of us. It's a story, and it should be a story, and I like to tell stories. Sometimes my stories get a little personal. Warren Harding in 1920, Jack Kennedy in 1960. There's a lot of personal stuff about them. There's personal stuff about FDR and Eleanor and Hitler in here. But I think that is not just salacious or gossipy, but these are people, and you have to understand what's going on in their brain when they step off the podium, when they're not giving campaign speeches or coming up with public policy, and that's important. That's important to the whole story. What lessons do we take from 1932? Whatever lessons the readers wish to put into it. I think of my books as 500-page Rorschach tests, because people take away what they want to take away. And often people say they cannot detect a bias in my books, and I take that as a wonderful compliment. I will, however, say, take a look at new technologies, how they can be fashioned into successful campaigns. In 1932, you've got aviation on both sides of the Atlantic, radio. Take a look at how protests and how violence in the street or disorders affect elections, and how our leaders react to them. People who want power are the people who will tend to get power. Executive decrees, you see that a little extent in America, more so in Germany. They can be dangerous things. Sometimes gridlock is better than headlock. What politicians say is different than what politicians will ultimately do. And yes, it's the economy, stupid, in 1932 and now. So, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy the book.